Good evening, everyone. I trust you are well and wish you Shabbat Shalom in advance. So, tonight we're going to discuss briefly about Parshas Vayetze. But first, let me tell you a little anecdote, something that'll make you laugh. I think we need a bit of humor in the current climate, don't you? So, they tell the story of a man that goes to the optician for his annual eye test. The optician puts a contraption on his face and asks the man what he can see. What I can see, says the man. I'll tell you what I can see. Through these glasses, I can see empty airports. I can see empty football grounds. I can see closed theaters. I can see closed pubs. I can see closed restaurants. Ah, says the optician. That means you got perfect vision. You have 20/20 vision. Get it? 20/20. That's the way we are seeing the year 2020. It's a tough year for all of us. But speaking about vision, one of the great moments of insight and vision came in this week's Torah portion, Parshas Vayetze. It is considered and referred to as Parshas Sasuma, a closed parsha. Only two parshas in the Torah are closed this week, and I think it's Balak is the other one, I believe. And Rav Gedalia Shul points out that the idea of it being a closed parsha is that it is the parsha of emblematic of Golus, of exile, and therefore the parsha, the Torah portion this week, is emblematic of the exile experience, which is unmitigated darkness. And that is why there are no gaps and no spaces, because when you are when you're going through some type of ordeal, some type of hardship, then you feel it is endless. How am I going to get myself out of this? How am I going to come through this? And it's that feeling which only comes when you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. If you can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, then the exile, the ordeal that you're going through is nowhere near as difficult. But the what we are challenged with, the long, painful exile over the course of so many millennia, is something that's painful because we can't see an end in sight. So Yaakov has a dream. Jacob has a dream. Let's read it inside. Some beautiful, beautiful ideas I want to share with you today. Okay. Firstly, it says, Vayifka b'makom, that he encountered the place. Rav Hirsch says it means that the place made an impression on him. In other words, when we arrive at any given station or location in life, it makes an impression on us, or we make an impression on it. The pasuk goes on to tell us, Vayachalom, that Jacob laid down. He hadn't slept for 14 years, been learning non-stop, and now he lays down and has the sun sets and he has this dream. And he has a dream of a ladder that is pointing heavenwards. And the top of the heaven, or the top of the ladder, is pointing towards reaching the heavens. And we know the vision. Good morning, Carol. Good evening, Carol. Of angels, celestial beings that are going up and they are going down. So this ladder says, as we've already mentioned, is supported by the Ramban in being symbolic of the ladder of Golus and exile, the exile experience, the diaspora experience that we have all encountered. It is we see there are angels that are going up and down, and he says, Rav Bernstein says, that the idea of these angels going up and down, that in itself, not just the darkness, but the angels going up and down, also is emblematic of the experience that we have had in every Golus, every exile that we have found ourselves as a nation. Be it Babylon, be it Media, be it in Greece, be it in Rome, whichever exile we've experienced, we have had the same experience as individuals and as a nation. What happens? We all know from our forefathers that we arrive in a certain place, and the immigrants. Good evening, Sam. Stan. we set ourselves up in a certain place. We all know that our ancestors, they started off in the East End, working day and night, doing any job that they could in order to be able to eke out some type of living. And then gradually, the next generation is able to be a bit more successful. They move out of the East End, they move to Northwest London, and the next generation are even more successful. Now they're professionals, now they've made it in the world. This is not just an Anglo-Jewry experience. In Germany, it was like this. In France, it was like this. In Italy, it was like this. In Egypt, it was like this. Wherever we were, Jews have this tremendous work ethic. We are one of the nations that is the most hardworking, that is the most industrious, the most productive. Have a look at the accomplishments and achievements of every single time we have found ourselves in any country, and yet we are able to turn it around, to turn it on its head and make a success. And therefore, says Rav Bernstein, Rav Isaac Bernstein, Zichrono Livracha, of Kinloss fame, he said as follows: the ladder, the angels going up and down, symbolizes our experience in exile. We said we started off working our way up the rungs of the ladder. Says Rav Bernstein, that is precisely what we are being told in this verse. The ladder is the ladder to success that the immigrants, that the Jews in exile have experienced. Initially, they make their way up, gradually make their way up the various rungs of the ladder. But that ladder, he says, the language is telling, it doesn't say nitzav, that it's resting, it says it's mutzav. Mutzav, says Rav Bernstein, means that ladder is pointing upward, but it's being held and supported by people down below. And when the tide turns, and there's a bit of jealousy and enmity from the other citizens living in a country about the success of the Jewish people, the runaway success of the Jewish people and Jewish citizens, what do? They take that ladder that they've been holding and they give it a good shake. And then what went up comes right on down. Says Rav Bernstein, that is the psyche, that is the experience of the Jewish people in every country. We've contributed so much. We've made a success despite the hardships that we face. But when we have reached towards the top of the ladder, there's always somebody below who wants to pull us down. They can't take the success story of the Jewish people. So that's a symbolism, a beautiful idea about the exile and about the symbolism of the ladder. We move on, and we know that the question is, what exactly has this got to do with Jacob? Jacob's having a dream, right? And we know that there were these four angels going up and down. The Medrash says that they represented the four experiences of exile in Babel, in Media, in Greece, and in Rome. And we know that we're still in exile. So the last one, which is the Edom, the Roman exile, which we are still in, right? Secular society is very much what Rome was all about. So he says that one, the angel was still going up, and it didn't seem to be coming down. And Jacob is worried in the dream because he sees that the last exile is the most painful, the most torturous exile that never seems to end and come finish. And he's worried about his children. And what does the Pasuk tell us? The verse tells us as follows: V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav. Who's at the top of that ladder? God Almighty is at the top of that ladder. And if God is on the top, then he's watching what's below. And the Almighty will push down that last celestial being, that last exile. God himself will finish. There is an end, because if God's on top, he's seeing what's going on. And when the time comes, we know and can be confident. And we can be comforted by the fact that God is standing above and will make sure that it ends. So the next idea I want to share with you, I'm going to skip around tonight rather than doing a theme, is something that you probably have all been familiar with, but you may not have picked up on it and observed it. Initially, what does Jacob do? He lays down to have this dream, and he's got Vayikach es Evan Vayikach me'avnei hamokum vayasem rashoso. He takes from the stones that are around him, and he places 12 stones around his head, and he lays down. Rashi says, why does he place the stones there? The idea is so that those stones will protect him, some measure of protection from animals, from wild beings that are around him in his sleep. At the end of this great vision that Jacob has, what are we told? It doesn't say that he takes the stones. Vayikach Esau Even. Do we find it? He takes the stone that was under his head. I ask you, friends, what happened? At the beginning of the dream, there were 12 stones around his head, and at the end, we're told he took a stone. So there's 11 stones missing. We started with 12, we end with 1. Where's the other 11 stones going? Rashi comes to the rescue. Rashi makes the observation that there started 12 and they ended 1. But really, those 12 had become 1. Because this, as we've already mentioned, and I want to drive home this point, if this is the vision of exile, then we always have the refuah before the makkah. We always have the antidote before the illness. God always makes it that way. When the stinging nettles, there's always around them bay leaves which can help you, which can ensure that you are healed. And so it is with everything that's in the world. God is merciful. Even if we have to suffer, there's always an antidote that's there for us to discover. And therefore, here is the antidote. What is the antidote? So Rashi says that there was a little squabble that took place between the 12 stones, each one wanting to be the stone on which Jacob would place his head. And what happens? A miracle occurs, and God makes all the 12 stones into one large boulder. And therefore, Jacob placed his head on that one stone. Ask the commentaries, I think it's the Chidah, the Maharal, everyone discusses it. How does that help the situation? Imagine this is the top of the stone. Jacob places his head on there. I ask you, friends, the same complaint by the other stones, other original stones, should exist. Jacob is not placing his head on me. Why is it helps? He can only place his head on one part of that stone. And the answer is that they all say is that once those stones had become one, once they'd become unified, friends, then there was nothing to talk about. When you're unified, then somebody else's success is your success. Somebody else's pain is your pain. That's what it means to be a Jew. That's what it means to be part of Klal Yisrael. We've forgotten it. We're too busy fighting. We're still feeling the pain and sorrow and anguish of exile. But if we were able to take off the blinkers from our eyes, we'll be able to see around us that we're all one and the same. We're all the Jewish people. We're all in everything together, and we should feel it. And therefore, it didn't make a difference which part of the rock, of the stone that Jacob's head was on, because we're all one. That is the secret to us ending this painful exile, of coming out the diaspora, of having peace in our time. It's when Jew and another Jew can get on, despite their differences. We can love what we have in common, and we can respect what we have that makes us different. I'll say it again. We can love what we have in common with someone else, and we can learn to respect what we have that is different from someone else. If only people would listen to this message. So often, even in COVID, so much jealousy, so much hatred, so much venom against all sectors of the community. Those that are the more religious look at those that are secular and are critical of them. Those which are secular say about the Frummers, why they've got to have those minyanim, why they've got to do this, why they've got to do that. Everyone is working against each other instead of working together as one. That has always been our Achilles heel. We've always had great success, and we're always great at shining the light outwards. The question is, are we able to shine that light inwards? Are we able to have that olive branch and put it towards someone who's different to us? It's easier to be friendly sometimes with a non-Jewish neighbor or the non-Jewish friend than it is to be friendly with another Jew. It shouldn't take a number on our arms to remind us that we're all really the same. An important lesson, and that is the secret of us turning around this world, this crazy world with so much pain and sorrow, and making it a place of peace and love. That's perhaps lesson number 2 or number 3. I've lost count. The next one I'm going to move on to. I just want to say one more idea. I said I would keep it short and sweet. Well, sweet. I'm trying to keep it short. Yaakov arrives at the well. It's all about shidduchim, friends, isn't it? Hi, Rebecca. How are you doing? And I'm not referring to you just about shidduchim. I'm just saying hello to you and to Rachel. Okay. So it goes like this. Jacob arrives at the well. It's amazing. In my days, it was Carmelis. That's where everyone used to hang out. It was Blooms and Carmelis. Anyone remember that? Blooms and Carmelis were the big hangouts where you met everyone. And then in the old days, we know with all the patriarchs and matriarchs, it seemed to be the place where you met people was the equivalent of Carmelis, which was the well. Anyway, Jacob arrives and he sees he's come to meet his wife. He's looking for Rachel. And he notices that all the shepherds are laying around. They're not doing anything, lazing around on somebody else's account. And what happens? He notices that Rachel can't get any water, right? And they say, listen, we'd love to give you water, but we can't give water until all the shepherds have gathered around, and then we lift off the boulder of the well together. What happens next? Jacob steps forward. In one foul swoop, like lifting a cork off a bottle, says Rashi, Jacob was able to lift off the boulder and be able to enable Rachel and all the other shepherds to feed their flock, to give water to their flock. The question is obvious. Jacob had been studying for the last 14 years in yeshiva. I have a son in yeshiva. Okay, they may go for the occasional run, a bit of cycling, a bit of maybe a walk around Jerusalem, but they certainly aren't pressing weights every night. Not the physical weights, maybe the mental weights. How comes he had the strength that 11 or so shepherds, 10 shepherds couldn't do? What 10 shepherds couldn't do, Jacob had the strength to do it. We're not known for our physical strength. We're known for our spiritual strength. What enabled him to do it? And there's a beautiful idea here. You know, there are instances that if you look on the news, you look back, you may recall them. Instances where people have managed to achieve the seemingly impossible. And I'll give you an instance. There was a child that was trapped under a car. Some of you may remember this story. It was in the news. And the mother hears the child, I think the leg was stuck under the car. The car had moved and the leg is stuck and the baby's crying. This child is crying. And the mother comes and in one foul swoop, she manages to muster all her strength and she manages to lift slightly the car to free and to prise away her child's leg. How did she do it? She'd been training in LA Fitness and Virgin, yeah, that she'd been doing pressing weights. She was a Hungarian weightlifter. Of course not. The answer is that sometimes it's about mind over matter. If you have the right mind, if you really, really want something, then nothing stands in your way. And the supernatural, the impossible becomes possible. You can defy the odds. You can accomplish and achieve the seeming impossible when you put your mind to something, if you really, really want it. And that is one of the great lessons that we learn. Another question. and this is the final thought, I promise you, okay? The shepherds are at work, and then they've come and had a rest by the well. Jacob comes and rebukes them, and he tells them, "Why are you laying around? Why are you laying around and doing nothing? Why aren't you working?" You know what they? You know what I would say? Imagine, I don't know, wherever you are, you got the builders, your local builders, TBS, Totteridge Builders. Okay, I gave them a plug. So imagine they are there, and they're having a break. And all of a sudden, some guy stops the car. He comes over. He's got nothing to do with the building site, nothing to do with the builders. And he says, "Guys, what do you think you're doing? Why do you think you're resting? You've got no right to rest. Get up and get back to work." That's what Jacob did. Why did he listen to him? Listen to the answer. There's one word that Jacob said that made them listen to a stranger. And the one word was Achai. What does Achai mean? Rachel, Rebecca, Paul, what does Achai mean? Achai means my brothers. When Jacob was giving them a rebuke, when Jacob was instructing them, when Jacob was sharing with them his observation, he shared it, and because he shared it as a brother, they saw that he was coming from a place of genuine care, concern for their well-being. He was interested in what was the best for them. It wasn't coming from a place of criticism or wanting to put the other person down, but it was coming from a place we genuinely wanted to help them. Amazing story about the Ponevezher Rav. 2 stories from the Ponevezher Rav we've got in 1 week. One is in the news sheet. You'll read it for yourselves. An amazing story. And this one also. Ponevezher Rav, of course, built the great Ponevezh Yeshiva and really established Bnei Brak, put it on the map after the war. And a long story short, he once came fundraising in America, and the guy drove in and he's looking for a space to park in this tall office block, and all the spaces are taken but one. The one space that was available, do you know which space it was, pal? It was the space that was reserved for the president. So he told his driver, the Ponevezher Rav told his driver, park in that space. He says, "But look what it says on the ground. It says reserved for the president. You're going to see him. You're going to get in so much trouble." "Don't worry, it'll be fine." So he parks in the space of the president. He then gets on the lift, goes up, and he's waiting outside. And then he comes and is invited into the president's office. You can imagine, palatial, opulent, impressive, big boardroom table, the whole works. And all of a sudden, as they start the meeting, and the Ponevezher Rav is giving Shalom Aleichem and befriending this guy and building him up, someone comes in and says, "I'm very sorry, sir, but we seem to have an issue downstairs. Somebody has parked in your space. The space is reserved, and I think it is the gentleman that is seeing you. They've parked in the reserved space." The president, look on his face changes, and he looks towards the Ponevezher Rav and he says, "Is it true?" The Ponevezher Rav, without missing a beat, said to them, "Nothing is reserved in this world. Everything is reserved only to be used in serving God. And therefore, that's why I parked in the space, because I wanted to be able to come to see you." And immediately, the demeanor, the disposition of this president changed. He was very impressed with the answer. He saw how he was sincere and genuine, the Ponevezher Rav was, and like Jacob in the story that said one word, "Achai, my brothers," it changed things round, and he wrote out a beautiful check. So the message is clear. Several messages we take away, and I'm going to summarize the messages for us this evening. Message number 1, we said that we should beware of the ladder of exile, the ladder of diaspora, that every country that we've been to, yes, we have started off at the bottom and we've seen material tremendous success, but there's always people that are holding that ladder, and therefore we shouldn't be so comfortable, because sooner or later that ladder is going to be shaken, and God forbid we can come tumbling down, as has happened in so many countries across Europe and beyond. The next message that we said, we spoke about the secret, the antidote to exile, which is redemption. And we said that is what was shown by the dream with the stones around the head. Started off with 12 stones and then became 1 stone, 12 being the number of tribes that Jacob would father. And we said that's the idea, that the secret to our success, The secret to us transforming ourselves as a nation from a nation that is divided to a nation that is united is the unity, is by seeing ourselves as one. And therefore it doesn't matter, because if you're all one, it doesn't matter where the tzaddik places his head. We're all in it together. Your success is my success. My failure is your failure. Whatever happens, we feel each other's successes and setbacks. That's message number 2. Message number 3, we said, was a similar idea, the idea of achai. Sorry, the idea of mind over matter. We mentioned about the idea that by the well, Jacob was able to prize away that massive boulder that all the other shepherds were unable to do so. It was because it was mind over matter, because he wanted to do it so much, and we gave examples of that. And finally, we mentioned about the idea of the achai, that Jacob was able to give constructive criticism, a mild rebuke to the shepherds that were lazing around on somebody else's account. And they listened to him. Why did they listen to him? Because he said one word: my brothers. When you show you care, then other people respect you. That's all for tonight, everyone. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, a great evening, and look forward to seeing you very soon. Shabbat Shalom, Good Shabbos.